What's good, everybody? Happy New Year and welcome back to the Cephalopod. My name is Sky, and we've got a lot to go over as I've been on vacation. And in that time, much has been revealed about the past, the present, and the future of the Seattle Kraken. While we've got plenty of the future to talk about, we do need to start with the past. Over the last 9 games, things have not been great for the Kraken. They've only won 2 of them, one against the Vancouver Canucks and the other against the Utah Hockey Club. The rest were losses against good teams like the Colorado Avalanche and Vegas Golden Knights, all in the same weekend, or the Chicago Blackhawks and the Ottawa Senators, who are not the Vegas Golden Knights and Colorado Avalanche. So the hope of a postseason berth is just not coming. I've made my peace with that. So the future does not look like the playoffs. The rest of the season is the future. It's about next season and the season after that and the season after that. So where do you start? I mean, we've talked to death about all the myriad problems that the team has. I think from a macro level, we can say that the defense does not play aggressively enough, to my standards at least. They do not engage physically. They do not allow zone exits to come naturally. They frequently bobble the puck in their own end, and that is just a team-wide problem. It's not just the defensemen. It is the forwards. It is the goaltenders. It is the penalty kill. It is the power play. Puck security has really fallen off a cliff, and there is no one core of players that is responsible for that. It's all of them. And so now we have to start thinking of the future, because playoffs, we're not doing playoffs. We need to start thinking about what do you do with the roster as it stands, because we already know it doesn't work. We need to start thinking about the future, because you need to start thinking about the future because a number of your originals are coming up on the final year of their contracts. Guys like Yanni Gourde are going to be a UFA at the end of the season. Guys like Brandon Tanev are going to be UFAs at the end of the season. Daniel Sprong's going to be a UFA. Probably not going to concern ourselves much with that. But then you're moving into the next year where guys like Jaden Schwartz, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Jordan Eberle, Eli Tolvanen are all in their last years with these contracts. And right now, you also have a couple of players you're going to need to think of when it comes to their RFA rights. Ty Cartier, for example, Riker Evans, for example, are currently looking for contract extensions. And given how things are going, I don't know what you do. You're also still dealing with the fact that Eli Tolvanen hasn't quite been what he's supposed to be. Jordan Eberle is still hurt. Chandler Stevenson has been not anything like what he was expected to be, and you have to pay him a very, very long time to remain a Seattle Kraken. And you know that your prospect pool is getting better and better every year, filling up with younger and younger and hungrier talent. And these contracts are starting to create a logjam. It's not a logjam yet, but you can see it forming. And that, I think, is going to be a huge problem going forward when it comes to the future of this team. As such, I think that the big goal of the next 41 games is to become a seller. As much as I don't love that, as much as I don't love watching a team lose, especially one that I am emotionally invested in, it's for the best. So for the next 41 games, the unfortunate thing is that now we just got to start thinking about this team as a seller. I think they need to start accumulating draft picks however they can. Losing Yanni Gourde to injured reserve does stink quite a bit, but hopefully what he's going through is short and quick so that they can sell them off to whomever it is that he is currently desired by. It seems like Leafs fans really want him. It seems like a number of playoff teams would love a guy like Yanni Gourde, and I would love Yanni Gourde. But the reality is that Yanni Gord right now doesn't help the Kraken with what they need, and that's to think about the future. I think they should also consider this with guys like Brandon Tanev, who I love. Brandon Tanev. Brandon Tanev is an awesome player. I love it when he goes off and gets these awesome breakaway chances. I love the culture of Brandon Tanev that he brings with him. Just this hard-nosed, never give up on the play, never give up on a check kind of attitude. And I think that it really sucks that this team cannot find a way for him to be more useful, or, gosh, for him to find a little more finish. Because if they could get that from him, I think they might be in a better position. But as of right now, that's not where they're thinking. I think they also need to come up with an answer for Capo Caco, who's going to be an RFA at the end of the year. I think they need to come up with an answer for Ty Cartier, or they need to come up with an answer for Riker Evans, who is currently an RFA. And the only way I can see that happening is if they start to make room. So I think they need to spend as much time as they can trying as hard as they can to win, while also knowing that they need to move as many bodies as they can and pick up draft capital. Because what we have here just isn't built to compete in the Pacific Division, and there's no reason to believe that it can. We've seen plenty of evidence to suggest that this team, is too dependent on 1, 2, or maybe even 3 players when it comes to consistent offense. When Vince Dunn leaves, offense drops off a cliff. When Jordan Eberle left, offense dropped off a cliff. The fact that no one has been able to truly be as game-changing, even the players who are supposed to be game-changing, like Matty Beniers, like Shane Wright, they can't get there. Even Brandon Montour is struggling big time to be as effective as he was. And I think part of that is the team just puts too much on a bunch of aging vets who are good, but they can't do this as consistently anymore because their bodies are breaking down. The problem is this system and these players do not agree with one another. I think we can come to terms with that. These players seem to want to play fast. They seem to want to play in the kind of chaotic style that we liked, that we saw work for them through the 22-23 season, and they just can't. There's something about the way that they're playing right now that just, there seems to be a disconnect. And as of right now, I don't know if they can continue with it being in place. That's where the next 41 games are. For me, anyway, is the coaching staff needs to decide whether or not this is something they can continue. Because we already know the power play's bad. The penalty kill is fine, that they can keep. The way, at least from the eye test that they play, and Dan Bilesma has brought this up, is that they seem to live and die by momentum. And the thing is that it's okay to do that in the AHL. It's okay to be the team that rides momentum. The problem is that the NHL, you need to make your own momentum. And if you can't do that, you're just going to get killed. And for the most part, throughout the year, that's what's happened to them. They will have a couple games where they score once and score again, and then they kind of roll through. But when the momentum isn't on their side, the game becomes a slog. Momentum doesn't seem to transfer between games. It's the fact that they basically need their goaltenders to play lights out, or they need their defense to stop not playing defense. They need to start. They need their offense to get off the walls. They need to figure out how to play with structure again. And that falls entirely on Dan Bilesma and his team. That needs to change. And for the next 41 games, it is up to him to make it clear that he can, or that it can be changed. Because if not, things are not going to look good. Because then you are probably going to have to go through your second coach in team history who earned it, at least in my opinion, doing as well as he did with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, but is just not capable of translating it to the NHL level. The thing is that Coachella from the beginning was a very good AHL team. They had very strong AHL level players and have over time replaced them with a pretty solid prospect system. They are not worried about Coachella because Coachella doesn't have to worry about it. The way that the AHL plays is so much different than the NHL. There's always this adjustment period that rookies from that system come to the NHL and learn that the game is so much faster. And you need to be so much more willing to jump in and create the momentum for yourself. You need to be willing to create your own luck. And that's something that the Kraken just can't do or don't want to do. And I feel like from now on, Dan Bilesma kind of has a target on his back. Because from now on, the fact that this squad still struggles in spite of everything, that's on him. It also falls on the players. It's up to them to, score the goals and keep the goals out, but it is up to him to try and improve it. And it also comes back to Ron Francis, who, again, I see the vision. I've seen the vision. I understand what he was going for. He was going for kind of like Hurricanes West, where they had the puck and they just strangled the life out of their opponent. But the thing is that he built a lesser version of it. One that could control a game and could kind of eke out a way around their mediocre goaltending, and then just never improved upon it. And so here we are with a team that is struggling to keep pace with the Anaheim Ducks. Like, this is not working, and a lot of this falls at Ron Francis's feet. I do feel like on some level, he was pushed to accelerate the plan a little bit. I don't think that we really needed a Chandler Stevenson type. I think it would have been a better idea to let Shane Wright and Matty Beniers screw up, because we're already aware that this wasn't a season that most people were expecting them to be very good in. And instead, we've got a player who was locked down until 2031 and is currently 30 years old. Like, he is not going to finish that contract, and it is very hard to get rid of. So I kind of wonder what Ron Francis is feeling right now, because this season has cast significant doubt on whether or not Ron Francis actually understands the real issues that this team faces. And it's not just, the team isn't as good as I thought. It's that whatever your plan was, it's both taking too long and you're moving it too fast to the point where there just seems to be this kind of snarl. And the things that you should be moving on from, you just aren't, for some reason. It's giving big Winnipeg Jets when they first came back to the NHL. For those of you who do not remember or were not paying attention, the Jets were a reasonably competitive team for a very long time, except that they didn't make a whole lot of moves at any opportunity where they could. And they had one particular goaltender who ensured that they were never going to be anything other than okay. And it's kind of how it feels right now. Seattle, they have had the opportunity to respond to their issues for a while now, and it doesn't seem like it seems like being patient to the fault. And it feels like being patient to a fault has just handcuffed them. So for the next 41 games, I feel like now's as good a time as any to start addressing it, because if you don't, that's probably someone else's problem that you're building. And frankly, the devil I know seems reasonably intelligent. I don't want to know who the devil I don't know is going to be. From now on, I don't think we should think of games as indicators of long-term success, because we can't think of it like that anymore. The Kraken need to think of this stretch of games as vitally important to the development of Shane Wright, the development of Ty Cartier, the development of Riker Evans, and the development of Matty Beniers. Because Matty's still growing, Shane Wright just got here, basically, and Riker Evans is playing for a contract. There are multiple players in Coachella who will likely start to swap in and out in the depth as they begin to decide what they're going to do with Yanni Gordon, Brandon Tanev. Guys like Ryan Winterton are probably going to come back. Ben Myers has been up and down all season. And there are plenty of young players who are just coming back for the World Juniors who are currently in Coachella. That could very easily play a late season game and look really good doing it. So I feel like the next 41 games, when you're not thinking about the individual games as a focus, is all about development. Are your old players actually struggling, or are they just going through a rough spell? Can you trust them, or do you feel like it's time to cut bait? There need to be some very hard decisions made by the end of the season, and I really hope that Ron Francis is ready for it, because as bleak as it looks like right now, as very bleak as this season has felt frequently throughout the season, there is clear signs that the future of this team is bright. They just need to be able to grab a hold of that light and hang on for dear life. Especially considering that a number of those prospects were on TSN. So let's talk a little bit about the World Juniors, since we're still talking about the future. The World Juniors just ended. The United States won, followed by Finland and Czechia as the silver and bronze medal recipients, respectively. Congratulations to all three teams. And the Kraken's prospects did amazingly. I thought they did very, very well. We'll start with Czechia. A weird place to start because they were a bronze medal team, but it's the most obvious where Seattle prospects did the best. Jakob Fibiger, the defenseman, had 5 assists through 7 games. Very prominent tournament for him. He was a real game changer for them. And who but Eduard Sale, second on the team in goals scored. Eduard Sale turned out to be a real game changer for them. Obviously, Jakob Stansel with the St. Louis Blues system was their premier guy. He was all over the ice for them, but Eduard Sale was right there with him. He was as dangerous as any player has ever been for the Czechs, and he was the one they trusted. When the shootout against Sweden in the bronze medal game started to go into round after round after round, they started throwing Eduard Sale out there. And he got the goals. He got them their bronze medal off the back of their shootout win. I have nothing but praise for him. He was an absolute monster out there. Just an absolutely exceptional tournament for him and Fibiger. Congratulations on the bronze medal. I really wish he could have gotten to the gold medal game, but Team USA was just a complete buzzsaw. Them's the breaks. It's how these tournaments work. Amazing tournament for them. Could not be happier with the way they played. Now we're going to move to the silver medalists, the guys who got so close. Finland was really the only team that challenged Team USA throughout the World Juniors, and they got dang close. Oh, they got dang close. Unfortunately, Julius Miettinen had a pretty alright tournament. He had 2 points through 7 games, but he had a pretty strong tournament in general. I thought he was a really tough opponent to face alongside just that entire Finnish roster. Like, Petteri Rimponen in net probably just made himself a millionaire and he doesn't even know it yet, because I guarantee you that the Finnish goaltender is fielding call after call after call from NHL agents right now. They did an amazing job. Kim Saarinen didn't play, the backup goaltender for the Finns, the Seattle prospect, but Petteri Rimponen was so good that I don't think that really mattered. It's good for him that he has a silver medal, and he'll get to return to HBK in Liga again. So he will continue on what I think is a pretty solid year for him. And now we got to talk about Sweden, who is cursed. Like, they are just cursed. This was as good a Sweden team as I think I have ever seen at the World Juniors. I've been covering it since 2016 or 2017. It was one of those 2 years. And every year, Sweden cruises through preliminaries, and then they hit a wall once they get into the knockout round. And this has been the case since 2011. It does not matter what they do. They go all experience, they hit a wall, and they either end up in the bronze medal game or out entirely. I don't know how this happens to them. They could bring experience, they could bring all kids, they run into a wall, and it happened again. Like, Axel Sanding Pellikka was incredible. Zeb Forsfjall, the Kraken prospect that kind of flew under the radar for most people, had 5 points. He was really good. Like the rest of Finland was. There were only 2 players on the entire team who didn't have a point. Sweden's cursed, man. If you're a fan of Trey Kroner, I am genuinely sorry for you. Like, I don't know how this keeps happening. Otherwise, it was a great tournament for Zeb Forsfjall. He was always played more as a defensive center, but you know what? His game really complements the Swedish system. So I thought he did a very good job, and it's a shame how it turned out, but he had a great tournament, and so did the Swedes. Here's hoping you could finally get into the medal round again, man, because I don't know what's going on with Sweden at the World Juniors. And finally, we've got the Canadian team. The Canadian team that spent all this time, all this money, spent time after time after time trying to ensure that they had everything perfectly set and ready to go. They had a coach well ahead of time. They had a selection committee well ahead of time. They selected 3 prospects from the Kraken's prospect pool: Berkeley Catton, Carson Rakoff, and Caden Price. By all accounts, Canada showed up, and while they weren't perfect, they left a lot of their really good defenders at home. They could have been okay. They could have been fine. I don't know if they were going to beat the United States, and they didn't, but they could have been something. That would have been better than what they were, which was hot garbage. Don't get me wrong. They beat the teams they were... Well, I say they beat the teams they were supposed to. They did not do that. They beat almost every team that they thought they should have. Except the minute I was on a plane, I was coming back to Spokane, and Canada and Latvia were still tied. Still tied. Going into the third period, I knew there was trouble. I knew something had happened, and something was currently happening. Team Canada looked completely out of sorts throughout the entire tournament. They had a number of players who were fantastic, as usual. They had almost every player on that team almost every player that they took was currently a prospect or is going to be a prospect in the upcoming draft. The problem that I had is that this team played 5 games, and if you're a good team at the World Juniors, you will be over a point a game. You will have multiple players over a point a game. And guess what? Czechs did. USA definitely did. Canada didn't. Canada could not score. They were the least efficient team out of any in the entire tournament. Worse than Latvia. Worse than Kazakhstan, who got absolutely pumped in the relegation game. They got to wait to play again. And Canada was worse than they were. And it just fell through to every other player. Berkeley Catton only had a good... And it fell through to all of the prospects. Berkeley Catton only had an assist. Caden Price had a goal and an assist. Carson Rakoff didn't have anything. He didn't even play the final 3 games. He didn't play the most important game, which was against Czechia. And they lost. The Czech Republic brought them out back and spanked them. They didn't get stunned. Team Canada got their ass kicked. And they took a number of Seattle's Canadian prospects and said, guess what? This is what it's going to look like for you as long as the current people in charge are running things. Because as we learned later on, none of these kids practiced. None of these kids had an opportunity to build any chemistry with one another. None of these kids had the ability to really find even their third gear. And I mean, that's just kind of how Hockey Canada is now, isn't it? A bunch of presumed victors until proven wrong, and if they've been proven wrong, then it's clearly someone else's fault. It is beyond the pale to watch Team Canada lose as badly as they did against the Czechs, against the Latvians, and against the United States, and call them anything other than what they are. They are currently the sick men of the sport. Because this has also been happening at the World Championship level. Like, it's great for Czechia that they were able to pick up a number of their NHL prospects at the World Championships to, have Pavel Saka, David Pastrnak, and, just steamroll through to the World Championship and have like a big old party in Prague or whatever. But Canada has struggled significantly with the World Championships. They've struggled here. And Canada has had to fight their way to a number of victories. They should be killing everybody. Is that not true? Or is it that their presumption of a victory, their presumption of a medal, has ensured that all these other teams, the Swedens, the Finlands, the United States, the Kazakhstans, and hell, even the Latvians, are starting to catch up. And if they're going to continue to build teams like they did, where nobody knows how to score, where nobody knows how to adequately play make, with Berkeley Catton on the team, with Carson Raykoff, the leading OHL goal scorer, the leading OHL point guy, then you're just going to keep running into this problem. It's going to keep happening. It is ridiculous to watch Team Canada keep making the same mistakes over and over, prioritizing size, prioritizing physicality at a double IHF game, at a double IHF tournament, no less. They run those like the Navy. They call the penalties there. It's insane to think of them like that. To not even practice. Not even practice. The Latvians practiced. You want to know what their response was to beating Canada? Well, that was pretty good for us, but we know that it's going to be hard every other step of the way, so we got to practice hard. The Finns practiced. Hell, the USA even practiced once or twice. It is so beyond me that their coach could sit there and act like nothing was wrong with the decision-making he had. I truly cannot get over just how poorly Canada ran this tournament. Just how poorly they ran things. And they have no one to blame but themselves. As a result, Carson Raykoff, Caden Price, and Berkeley Catton had very bad tournaments, and now they're falling behind in the scoring race, which is a real shame. Like, Andrei Loshko was not selected because Belarus was not in the Under-20 World Junior Championships this year, and he's starting to creep up the OHL scoring list. He's over by Carson Raykoff, who's fallen all the way to 16th because he missed all these games playing for a team that didn't practice. I honestly think that playing in this World Juniors may have stunted Carson Raykoff a little bit. I'm sure the minute he gets back to Brampton, he'll be just fine. I'm sure when Berkeley Catton gets back here in Spokane, he'll be fine. I'm sure that Caden Price will be fine too. It's just, man, if this was what you were going to do with the team that you had, straight up, why bother bringing them? Just build the team that is as dumb as you wanted it to be. Because it's clear you galaxy-brained it and you lost. And now everyone who is in charge has a microscope down on them, and people are asking the question, what was that? And none of them have a good answer for it. It's going to be very interesting to see how Team Canada responds to this. I don't have any personal reservations towards them improving. I'd love to see what happens next. Anyway, congratulations to all Kraken prospects that made it back to the World Juniors, and especially congratulations to those who medaled. Great World Juniors. This was an excellent tournament. If you haven't watched it before, I highly recommend it. Next year, Kazakhstan's been flipped out with Denmark. The groups are looking a little more competitive this year. It looked like Group A was just going to be a nightmare no matter what, and Group B was going to be a little bit of an easy street, but now I think it's a little more even, and I think it's going to produce an even better tournament next year. Very, very excited for all the prospects, and I'm very excited for the future of this team, even if it doesn't look super great on the outset. Meanwhile, that didn't mean that, Seattle's prospects have played. There's also some other things that happened. The PWHL came to Seattle, and they sold out, and it was a great game. The PWHL's takeover tour hit Seattle and CPA. It was the Boston Fleet versus the Montreal Victoire, or however you say that in their obscure dead language. They had an absolutely banger game. It was a 3-2 shootout win, and it was the highest attended game in the PWHL season to this point, and the 5th largest in league history. Granted, that's only 2 seasons, but that's still pretty good. Full disclosure, big Boston Fleet fan, against my better judgment, because boy, that team can be frustrating. Oh my god. Too talented to struggle with scoring this much. But they had a very good game. They played very, very well. Susanna Tapani is her. She is an absolute demon of scoring. Could not love watching her more. Huge fan. PWHL fans in Seattle desperately want a team, and I feel like they should come out here. I desperately want the PWHL to finally do what the other 2 leagues couldn't do and get across the Mississippi River. It's been so long since the last women's team that was even in the Mountain Time Zone. It's been so long since Seattle has had a women's team that the last time that there was one, they were all playing in long skirts, and there is no color photography of any of their events. It's been far too long. There is a long-standing community who wants this for Seattle, and I think it deserves it. Great game. Love watching the Victoire lose. Love watching the Boston Fleet win. And as soon as Seattle gets their own women's team, I will happily change allegiances, because boy, the way the Fleet play drives me nuts, but I love them dearly. Rousing success. I would love to see expansion, but there's a bunch of different things that need to happen. Namely, they need to probably get a better TV deal, and they need to start going out to places like Philadelphia and Chicago first. But I just think it's time for pro women's hockey in King County, and I'd like to see it now, please. And to finish things out, I figure we ought to take a look at how the Coachella Valley Firebirds are doing. Obviously, Ben Myers is currently with the team, so that means that Yanni Niemann is the leading goal scorer for your Coachella Valley Firebirds. He has got 11 in 32 games, not shabby. He has also got 20 points, and right behind him in the scoring race is Jagger Firkus, who's got 7 goals, 13 assists, and 20 points in 32 games. Very excited for him starting to jump up there as one of the leading rookies on the team. Ryan Winterton's also been pretty good. He's got 10 goals in 24 games. Very excited for him. And the hardest name on the roster to get right in a first spelling, Leighton Rude, has actually really shot up the scoring list over the past couple of games. He's got 15 points in 32 games and 8 goals. Very solid play so far. Coachella has sort of settled in as 4th overall in the Pacific Division in the AHL, but they are also 5th overall in the AHL's Western Conference. They are almost certainly going to be a lock for the playoffs, barring something insane happening. So, very excited for how they do. I'm going to be paying much closer attention to how they play over their game weekends. And as a final bit of discussion, again, the future of this team. The future of this team is as bright as Ron Francis and his team are willing to make it. Ron Francis is clearly a very smart man. He is clearly aware that things are not going nearly how they expected. And I think he needs to make some really tough decisions before this season is over. And you know what? I bet you he will. The trade deadline is coming up. They've got about 2 months before that hits. And it's going to be very early in March. So it's going to be right after the Four Nations tournament, which is going to be in the middle of February. We're not going to talk about that yet because there's nothing to talk about. The reality is that this team needs a massive shakeup. A massive shakeup. And the only way that they're going to do that is if Ron Francis has the will to do it. I think he can. It's just a matter of will. It's just a matter of looking at that bright light and saying, I will use it to light my candle instead of curse the constant darkness that this team currently lives in. And with that, I think I will call it there. Thank you so much for listening to the Cephalopod. If you liked it, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and all major podcast catcher apps. If you liked this but wanted to see it in written form, you could go on ahead and check out DavyJonesLockerRoom.com, the #1 source for Seattle Kraken news, rumors, and, of course, our game threads, previews, and recaps of every Seattle Kraken game. If you like this but you wanted to see it on YouTube, where you can see my ugly mug, you can go on ahead and check us out at Davy Jones Locker Room on YouTube. You can also find us on most major platforms of social media, including Facebook, Twitter, or X, and, of course, Blue Sky. You can find us at Davy Jones LR on those platforms. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Sky. Keep calm, post Zoidberg when we win, and go Kraken.